Hello, this is Rick Shew with Left Shew Politics. Welcome to episode 5 of our podcast. Don't I sound enthusiastic? Yay! It's our first post-election podcast, and I'm joined with the other Left Shews, Jeremy and Michael. What's going on, gentlemen?
We're doing it.
Yeah, goodbye.
We all need some coffee. Hey, I just had back surgery on Monday morning, major back surgery, and so this is kind of a double whammy week for me. But we have a fine gentleman on that's going to shed some light on all this for us, Matt Mackowiak. He's a Washington, D.C. and Austin, Texas-based political and communications professional and the founder and president of Potomac Strategy Group. Matt provides political analysis for the Fox News Channel, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, BBC, and he was kind enough to once again slum it with a bunch of internet nerds here on the Left Shew Show. Matt Mackowiak, welcome, sir. Thank you for being here.
Hey, guys. It's good to be with you again. How are you?
We've had better weeks.
I'll bet.
We've had better weeks. So, Matt, I'm a big fan, and I've very much appreciated you taking a stand, a moral stand against a lot of the things that Trump did during the campaign. And, of course, you had a write-in candidate for yourself. That is correct, right?
Yeah, I announced the first day of early vote in Texas I was casting my ballot for Evan McMullen. But I also said that, I recognize that if I lived in a battleground state, my choice would have been much more tortured and complicated. And I don't know what I would have done. I mean, honestly, the Supreme Court is so important from my perspective that I would have weighed that differently. I knew we were going to win Texas. But, yes, I voted for Evan McMullen in Texas and said so publicly.
And, Matt, you were one of the first people that on the national level that kind of put out the sanity on that whole Texas thing. I knew in my heart's a heart that Texas was not going to turn blue this election. It was exciting to see some of those early polls come in, but I knew it wasn't going to happen, and you were one of the people that declared that rather specifically, and a lot of people were really hoping that maybe it would, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, that's interesting. But you still took a stand, and and in your analysis, I went back and watched some YouTube videos today of you and Chris Hayes, and for the last few months, and you were pretty confident yourself that this was probably not going to happen for Trump.
Yeah.
But after the Comey thing, I think that you and I were text messaging, and you were thinking that it bumped his chances up from like 15% to maybe 35, which was significant. But man, he ultimately was the victor. So here's the first question for you, and it's a little bit of a broad stroke, but just what are your general feelings and thoughts on this election? What were when the results started rolling in and it became pretty apparent that Donald Trump was going to be the 45th president? What was going through your head?
I think like a lot of people, I just couldn't believe what was happening. I mean, it's just so shocking. Given all the data that was out there, all the polling that was out there. I don't believe there was some collusion type of effort to rig the election for Hillary. I just think that a lot of assumptions were made and a lot of the polling was just bad. And I think there was a hidden Trump vote, and I think Hillary underperformed. And that was a toxic combination for her that resulted in Trump very narrowly winning this election. I mean, from an electoral college standpoint, he's going to have won the most electoral college votes, I think, since 1988. From a margin standpoint, if you look at the 3 blue states that he won, in the so-called blue wall and the Rust Belt, the margin there was really small. You add up the margin in all 4 states, it was probably 200,000 votes.
Right.
1% in Pennsylvania and less than 1% in Wisconsin and Michigan. And so Hillary was not far from winning this election. I know that sounds crazy, but Trump, because he turned those 3 blue states, he could have lost Florida and still won the Electoral College, which is kind of shocking by itself. So I did expect Hillary to win, although not overwhelmingly. I think I predicted her at 307 electoral votes with Florida, Nevada holding the blue wall. But at the end of the day, what's clear is that millennials didn't turn out for Hillary. African Americans didn't turn out for Hillary. The Hispanic turnout was not as high as we thought it might be. And Trump turned out, white Catholics. He won white women. He turned out white men everywhere, both college and non-college educated. He won white Catholics. He did enough in enough states to win enough electoral votes to become the next president of the United States, and you got to give him and his team a lot of credit.
No, you do. I mean, it pains me to say that because of the nasty campaign that he ran. Yeah. I don't want to give them credit, but I'm also been struggling with this on myself, and then you guys feel free to jump in here. But this guy's going to be our 45th president, and I love our democracy, and I am accepting that fact. I'm not on the streets protesting, nothing against the people that are. God bless them. They can do what they need to do. It's cathartic for them. That's fine. But I'm accepting the fact that he won, and he won fair and square. I'm just still trying to get my head wrapped around how the heck it happened. When I started to see some of those counties in Pennsylvania that were solid blue flip red, that's when I personally knew that we had a problem. Jeremy, what's your thoughts?
From my perspective, how it all happened, it's starting to sort of clarify itself in my mind looking back in retrospect. There's I think that there's a big case to be made for the absolutism that's been pervasive in our politics over the last 16 to 20 years, and on both sides really having a negative effect that ultimately coalesced into creating a scenario in which a Donald Trump could thrive. And Matt, I'm really kind of wanting to get your perspective on some of that, because there's been a lot made of white, rural, working class voters being sort of feeling alienated and forgotten, and like they're sort of losing their way of life, and so much so that they're not just willing to, reject the Democratic establishment, but the system as a whole, including the Republican establishment. And I can certainly see how the absolutist politics on the left and talk of globalization and racial politics and those sort of things sort of played into those anxieties, but it also feels a lot to me like the anxieties of those people were, I don't want to go so far as to say manufactured, because some of them are certainly valid, but certainly they were deliberately fueled and maybe engendered by the strategy of the right over the last, 15, 20 years. Sort of, your religion is under attack, your guns are at risk, your jobs are being given away, and terrorists at your doorstep, sort of like fueling a fear and anger that ultimately led to a point where someone that is a true demagogue like Trump could come in and just take over that whole wing of the party and run the table in the primaries and ultimately win the general election. So I'm wondering, sort of from the right standpoint, is there any thought of that as maybe we need to tone that down a little bit, maybe we need to stop the absolutism? And because certainly from the left, I think they're starting to see that.
Yeah, it's a really thoughtful point. And I've been critical of a narrow, portion of the so-called conservative media. I think there have really been some good actors and some bad actors on my side of the aisle this cycle, and I would single out Sean Hannity and Breitbart and Ann Coulter,
sure, right,
and Laura Ingraham, and some of those individuals, and say, look, they've done the things you're talking about, at being absolutist and being over the top with language, and really, I think, embracing Trump from a profit margin standpoint, from a profit motive standpoint, and not
right,
thinking about the bigger implications. I do also think, though, that there have been some very responsible voices on the right. National Review, Weekly Standard, a number of others that really stand out, I think, to me. But look, to your point,
but nobody reads those. I mean, we're not talking about white rural working class voters. They're
no,
not.
That's true. No question. But you could also argue nobody reads Salon or Daily Kos.
No, that's true.
There are voices on both sides that are niche publications. But look, here's the thing for Trump. I'm actually less worried about this than I was 24 hours ago. And we'll have to see what he does. Look, he's a little bit unpredictable. I think he's unprepared for this, obviously. He's going to have to really surround himself with professional people, and that would exclude a lot of the people he had around him in the campaign. But I actually think, this may be the first third-party president we've ever had. He's going to be called the first the Republican president, leader of the Republican Party, and he is. But,
right,
the fact that he called Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, on the first day, and is already trying to work on this infrastructure bill that I assure you no Republican and no conservative wants to see advance, tells you that he is going to be triangulating from the first day. And in fact, if you remember, Clinton in 94 got killed in the midterms and then decided to triangulate with Dick Morris the last 2 years of his first term, and that was his plan to try to get reelected. I actually kind of feel like Trump is going to do some triangulating from day one. There are going to be issues where he is not on board with the Republican Party view, whether that's trade, whether that's some of his policies as it relates to immigration, whether it's isolationism. There are some things there where there's some fundamental disagreements, and honestly, I think, they're going to look for consensus, and that's why the first 100 days are going to be really important. Replacing Obamacare, maybe repealing Dodd-Frank, conservative on the Supreme Court, passing a border security bill. Those kind of things are core things I think Republicans can agree on. But, we're going to have to see how he does. I mean, there's a steep learning curve for anyone that becomes president. It's going to be the steepest we've ever seen for Trump because he has such limited experience in government and in politics. But he obviously was able to tap into this anxiety that people feel. And I think the smartest point that I've heard about this whole election, a friend of mine made to me, and I wrote it in my New York Observer column, and that is Trump gave blue-collar voters a chance to vote their social values and their economic values simultaneously, and no Republican had been able to do that to this point. And I think that does, at least to some extent, explain the Rust Belt success he had that the Clinton campaign did not see. She didn't go to Wisconsin once in the general election, which is stunning. She went to Michigan twice, and both of those times were fairly late. So, again, I understand why folks on the other side of the aisle are really, really afraid. I think part of this is that a lot of what Trump said on the campaign trail is, number one, not going to become policy, and number two, not going to become law.
Like the wall?
Yeah, I don't believe that Trump believes maybe 50% of what he was saying on the trail. He was just saying it because he knew he could get the response and reaction and drive up the enthusiasm on that side. My problem isn't the idea that maybe he's going to be able to affect some of that policy. My problem is that he was able to convince so many people, and so many people were so eager and willing to vote for that sort of extremist ideological promise.
Well, his entire campaign took off like a rocket the day that he said that Mexicans that were coming over here from Mexico, that the Mexican government was sending. By the way, it's a pretty important part of that quote that makes absolutely no sense. Right. But that they were here and they were rapists, and that was the catalyst for his campaign. And so from day one, there's been an issue with this racial demagoguery and everything, and it's also just been very frightening with his Muslim ban and things that are not just unconstitutional, but they're un-American. And there's a lot of people in this country right now that are uneasy, and they're afraid, that are minorities, that are Muslim Americans, that are Hispanics, that are here, and they're dreamers. Their parents are illegal. They've been here for 30 years, and they know no other world. And that anxiety is real, and I hope, and I really do mean when I say this, I hope that as our president, that he can overcome the rhetoric that fueled his campaign, and that he can really begin to heal even those wounds, because it's such an important part of the fabric of our country, and these people are very crucial to just who we are as a nation. And I just hope and pray that that's what he does. But,
well, I mean, so Malloy, is he going to build a wall? Is he going to have the deportation force? So what do you think is going to be actually off the table? And then how do all of the Trump followers, how do they react to that?
Matt, thoughts?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, this idea that we're going to have a 20-foot wall over the entire southern border was never reasonable. And of course, Mexico is not going to pay for it. Mexico doesn't have any money to pay for it to begin with. They have a trade imbalance with the United States, not the other way around, and their economy is an absolute mess right now. But I do think it's reasonable to say we need to finish the wall, which the law says is required currently. And that doesn't mean putting a wall in the middle of a river, and it doesn't mean putting the wall at the top of the 4,000-foot Davis Mountains in West Texas. It does mean in urban areas finishing the wall. We've seen that succeed in San Diego, which former Congressman Duncan Hunter, the father, not the son, completed with the Secure Fence Act, and they saw dramatic positive results there on the San Diego portion of the Texas-Mexico border.
Was that a result of the wall? And this is a legitimate question, not that I have the answer. Was that a result of the wall, or is it just it being there during the same time the economic conditions changed in Mexico, where a bunch more manufacturing, and then the net immigration changed to zero?
That's a really good question. It's a smart question. And my memory on this is a little hazy, but my memory is that the San Diego portion of the wall was finished about 10 years ago. It's not like it was finished 3 or 4 years ago. So I think some of that may have predated some of that. But you're right. There has been no net new immigration from Mexico into the United States for several years. And that's because in some ways the economy in Mexico has been better for those immigrants, those potential immigrants, than it has been in the United States. In fact, there have been more people leaving the United States to go to Mexico than there have been from Mexico coming in. Now, that's not to say there's no problem. There clearly is a problem. I was in McAllen at a conference a few months ago, listening directly from Border Patrol members, and honestly, the stories they tell you about what happens on the border, including on the U.S. side of the border, on ranches, people that have homes, ranch-style homes on their property, and the constant influx of people that come in, the threats they get. It would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. This is real life. This is what's actually happening. So, I think there's always a difference for candidates between what they say when they run and what they can actually achieve, right? It's the whole line of we campaign in poetry and we govern in prose, and I think that's going to be true for Trump. It would have been true for Hillary as well. Maybe not to the same extent, because Trump was a little bit more liberated with his language. But he is, he's a deal maker, and he wants to be seen as someone that gets things done. He almost doesn't even care what the things are, right? He just wants to get things done. And he has these buckets of areas where he wants to see improvement. He wants to see wages rise for the middle class. He wants to do something about trade. He wants to shut down illegal immigration. He wants to reform the tax code to grow the economy. He wants to build up the military. He wants to keep the Supreme Court conservative. Those are his core areas of focus, and I think that's where he's going to focus broadly. He's going to have his team and his cabinet and his senior staff, we'll have to see who those people are, but he's going to have those individuals fill in the details. Okay, and so it really is going to be a little bit of a delegation. I think you're going to see him get his hands dirty on bilateral negotiations as it relates to trade deals, because he cares a lot about that. He thinks he knows a lot about that. But he just wants to see the country in a better position, 6 months or a year from now than it is now. As long as it is, I almost don't think he cares what specific thing, caused it. He wants to just generally have an upward trend that he can point to show that he's been a success.
So, I've been going back and listening to some old interviews, watching some old interviews, in fact, with him on Larry King, Oprah, 1980s, early 90s. And I've been because I have been trying so hard. And again, I'm bringing this up, little sympathy here. But I had my back surgery, and then this happened. It's been a rough week for me emotionally and physically. And I've been just trying to find the silver lining in all this because my wife and I both have. That's what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 days. We've shed some tears, we've done some hugs, and now we're just looking for, hey, let's talk about the positives of this. What could come out of this? And I'm like, if the guy that I've been watching in some of these interviews, if you go back and watch him and some of the ideas that he had 25, 30 years ago, and his attitude towards our country and the kind of words that he used and the things that he wanted to get accomplished, I wish that was the guy that ran this campaign. That maybe, just maybe, that'll be the guy that governs. And if it is, then we'll be better off for it. And if it's not, then we'll fight like hell to replace it.
So, and Matt, I'm sure this is what you went through in 2008, in some sort of version. Yeah. But there's all this. Of course, these emotions, and you have a lot of colleagues on the left. Everything how we feel, right? And it's not good for democracy either when anyone ever feels that an election has been maybe stolen somehow from them, right? And I would never go so hyperbolic to say it was stolen because that's not how our system works. But I was thinking about it, as we know that Hillary won the popular election.
Right.
Obviously, the polls starting to tighten towards the end, but it was vast. I think in one national poll 3 weeks before the election, she had a 14-point gain. Then you had Rudy Giuliani.
But you never believed that, did you? I didn't believe that.
Well, let me make my point based off of it. Okay. No, probably not quite that big, but at least the momentum was there, and voter enthusiasm was actually going well for her for the first time. So then Rudy Giuliani, 3 weeks before the election, or 2.5 weeks before the election, goes on Fox News and has a little wink and a nod. Hey, no, we actually got a couple more things up our sleeve. You'll see it's coming out. And obviously it's kind of like slowly been leaking that he was receiving third-party information about FBI agents, right, who were intentionally planning on leaking that data if Comey didn't get it out there about the server. So my question would be, how do we feel, like you said yourself, you said blue states, we were within 200,000 votes of Hillary actually being the president. That, as far as that is a number, it's minuscule, and that has to do with voter turnout. The Trump campaigns, they said on the back end, voter suppression was their last-ditch effort. And then that voter suppression looks to us like it came from the FBI, and it worked. It feels where the right got so mad about if Obama was investigating the super PACs using the IRS, that would have been abuse of government. How do we not feel on some level that this is an abuse of government and could have even stolen the election?
Yeah, one thing I would just say, with real sincerity is I think going into conspiracy land, is kind of a cul-de-sac to nowhere. This was an eminently winnable election for the Democrats, clearly. And at the end of the day, if Hillary hadn't won 7 million fewer votes than Obama did 4 years ago, she would have been president. You just look at Wisconsin, 25,000 reliable Democratic voters who voted for Obama didn't show up. 40,000 in Milwaukee. And the margin that Trump won by was 25,000. So if you think about Hillary's campaign,
and isn't that enthusiasm?
It is, and this is something that Axelrod said on CNN the other night. Making the case against your opponent does not create enthusiasm the same way that offering an inspiring message does. So I think to some extent that's part of this. With regard to the FBI question, look, there's no question that the Comey letter contributed to this. Now, Trump was actually gaining before the Comey letter came out. The polls were tightening before that. But they tightened even more, and the timing on that was really important because it put Hillary on defense for, let's say, 7 of the final 10 days. But there were other things that were happening. Obviously, the Obamacare letters that hit 2 weeks before the election that had rate increases in them that went to everyone that had health insurance. The general sense of 7 in 10 voters that the country's headed in the wrong direction. Trump was just able to sort of fly above a lot of this stuff. The other great quote that I've seen this election is from Selena Zito, who's now with the New York Post and used to be with the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. And it's on some of the most brilliant things of this whole cycle. She said, the media takes Trump literally but not seriously. Trump supporters take Trump seriously but not literally.
That's a good quote.
I think it's a really good one. It says a lot.
Wow, that kind of knocked the breath out of me.
It's really good. Yeah. And look, again, I think you can make an argument that Hillary lost this race, not that Trump won it. I'm not trying to take.
I would make that argument. Yeah.
I'm not trying to take anything away from Trump because honestly, the fact that he was willing to run and the fact that he was willing to stay in this race when things got really hot and heavy for him and pretty unpleasant, so a lot of which he brought on himself. You know, that self-belief, that determination, honestly, is a big part of how he won. But at the end of the day,
no Comey letter does, in your honest opinion, no Comey letter, and where she couldn't pivot to the inspiration.
Yeah.
Last 2 weeks of campaign, is Hillary Clinton the president of the United States?
So I think in any race where the margin is close, everything made the difference, right? It's like Chris Hayes said this last night on Twitter. It's like when Obamacare passed with what was it, 50 or 51 votes, every single person that voted for it was the one that made the difference, right? And so yes, the Comey letter was a huge contributing factor to why the result was what it was. I think there's probably 5 or 6 things that contributed to it. You remove one of them, would the result have been different? I don't know. If she'd gone to Wisconsin 2 or 3 times in the last 2 weeks, maybe she wouldn't have lost that state. She shouldn't have lost Michigan. I mean, both John Weaver and Mike Murphy, who've won statewide races in Michigan and have a lot of experience there, were 100% certain Trump could not win Michigan. And I presume that's the way the Clinton folks felt as well. So what Trump did was pretty remarkable, particularly in that blue wall. I mean, my expectation was the blue wall would stay up the entire time, and that's part of why Trump wouldn't have a chance. But he needed to run the table, and he did. He won Florida. He won North Carolina. He obviously kept Ohio and Iowa, which we thought he would. And then he was able to not lose Arizona and not lose Utah, which was a big question mark and would have made his path tougher. But at the end of the day, to me, winning Florida by the margin he did, which was pretty significant, and then finding a way to finally win Pennsylvania, boy, you just have to give him credit. Yes, there were factors that contributed to this. There's no question about that, and you can isolate any one factor and say that's the reason Hillary lost. At the end of the day, I just think Hillary turned out not to be a very good candidate. I really just think that's really kind of the bottom line. And I'm not saying Trump was a great candidate, but it turns out he might have been a better candidate than we thought he was.
Yeah.
Well,
sure.
Here's the thing: that this was a change election, and so the argument can be made that she was a terrible candidate for a change election. In fact, Matt,
exactly.
once you get off the call with us here, the 3 of us are going to tear each other's throats out about that exact thing. Right
She's an awful candidate.
That we're arguing about, because I'm saying that she's a better candidate than my 2 friends here are giving her credit for, but. That's a conversation for when you're off the call. So I had one more question for Matt. His time is precious. Jeremy, did you have anything else for him before?
No, I'm good. I really appreciate your perspective. And I've avoided TV for the last 36 hours. I've read several things online. I don't think anybody's getting it all right yet, but I think everybody's got a lot of introspective review to do over the next 6 months to a year to sort of figure out exactly what's going on and how to move forward.
Yeah, and I would just say one thing, on that point. Look, both parties have problems. Okay. The margins that Trump narrowly won this election. He did not expand our brand to the minority groups that are growing demographically very rapidly. This was a low turnout election. He won a low turnout election. That's never good for the future. But he now has an opportunity, right, to have a good record, perhaps in the first 100 days of getting some big things done and then being judged on his results. But look, the Democratic Party has some pretty big problems too, and it's not Jim Comey and it's not Hillary Clinton.
Sure.
It's much deeper than that. I think we all thought the post-election discussion was going to be the Civil War of the Republican Party and could the Republican Party survive. I'm not going to be so hyperbolic as to say can the Democratic Party survive, but I do think they're going to face a couple of years in the wilderness here with almost no power in Washington. You've got Republicans with, I think, 33 or 34 governorships, 52 Republican senators, 238 or more members of the House, and an ability to enact an agenda. And so the question becomes, who leads the Democratic Party going forward? I tweeted the other night, the age of the 5, biggest leaders in the party right now, they're all 68 years or older. Between Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Hillary, Nancy Pelosi, and I'm forgetting one more, Bernie Sanders, they're all 68 years or older. Who is that next generation? Could it be the Castro twins? Could it be Gavin Newsom?
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential there. Cory Booker, there's a lot of potential there. But who is going to step forward and who can unify the Democratic Party between the Bernie wing and the Sanders wing? The Sanders and Warren wing, and then the more sort of mainstream, let's call it Tim Kaine wing of the Democratic Party. I think that is a challenge going forward.
Well, Matt, and that was actually my last question for you. I was going to ask you to put on your strategist hat and say, let's say that you work for the Democratic Party. Yeah. What would you suggest to them to do in this post-Obama era we're leading into a Trump presidency? You touched on some of it there, but is there anything with this specific formatting of my question that you could add to that?
So what I would say is, I don't try to make it my practice to give Democrats advice. Number one, they
like you're Dick Morris of the 90s.
This thing's so incredibly hypothetical right now because we are in the woods for a couple of years. I think
number one, I don't necessarily want to see Democrats succeed, but number two, I doubt they'd listen. But I think what I would say, and I'm trying to remember who I saw say this in the last couple of days, but it might have been James Carville or someone. But look, it's pretty clear the Democratic Party has not paid attention to the white working class in the last decade.
Not as much as we should have.
Not as much as you should have, certainly.
But that is exactly what we were saying before.
Absolutely. I think in policy we attempted to address it, but we didn't physically sit down with these people.
This is all a jab at me. Let's let Matt finish, then you guys can tear my head off afterwards. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Absolutely, and I think part of this is that the party that keeps their base, but also brings the center of the country in with them and does it in an effective way through policy and through issues and through coalition building is the one that's going to succeed. And so obviously the world's changing, the country's changing, we're changing demographically, we have some major challenges. At the end of the day, parties need to be judged based on the results when they get power. Republicans, I thought, maybe didn't take full advantage of that in the Bush years from 2000 to 2008. I think you can make some arguments that Obama stopped the bleeding economically initially, but you look back at his 2 terms. I mean, what is that legacy, and how does Trump's election and his likely undoing of much of what Obama tried to do through executive orders, what does that mean in terms of his legacy? So I think in both cases, Bush and Obama are going to be viewed kind of in the middle of the range of presidential, record. And so the question now is, are we in a post-partisan world where Trump is sort of this triangulating, third-party president, or is he able to keep the Republican Party together, achieve real things, and then be judged on the results? Democrats face some challenges. Look, 2018 is probably not going to be a very good cycle unless Trump's a disaster. You look at it, they got 28 Senate seats up. There's only, I forget what the number is, 6 or 7 Republican seats up. I think it's 25 and 7. I think I 25 and 8, 25 Democratic seats and 8 Republican seats. You look at a lot of those states, North Dakota, Michigan, Missouri, West Virginia. I mean, Republicans could net 3 or 4 seats in the Senate 2 years from now, depending on how things go. So, to me, I think Democrats probably want to focus a little more on the state level going forward, what they can achieve in states where they have some leaders. But honestly, they're going to have to unify their party, and there's some different wings on the Democratic Party, just like there are on the Republican side. The problem is they're in the minority for the next 2 years, without question, and so they're going to face some challenges in terms of unifying when they're in the minority. It's always hard to do that because minority parties do not have one leader. We have not had one leader since Obama's been in office. For a time, we had Mitt Romney in the middle there when he was our nominee, but we've really been sort of without one central leader, and the Democrats are now going to face that certainly for 2 years and perhaps for longer.
That is correct. So, Matt, I'll be at the Texas Tribune Festival next year, but hopefully we'll meet you before then. Next time you're in Dallas, I've said many times, I'm part owner of a bar. Got some free drinks there ready for you to enjoy, so hopefully we'll meet in person soon, man.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you. We really appreciate you coming on, Matt, and please come back to the show sometime.
Thanks,
okay?
Absolutely.
Thanks,
my pleasure. Take care, guys.
Appreciate
Yes, sir. Thanks, Matt. Well, gentlemen, Matt is a smart guy.
Yeah, some interesting perspectives there. I couldn't really disagree with a lot of what he said. I mean, some of it, ideological differences, but ultimately, some very thoughtful responses there.
So and listen, and what I was saying earlier, I do not like Donald Trump. I don't like his racism, his sexism, his xenophobia. He is, to me, I think he's a vile, nasty man. If you go back and watch some interviews with him in the 80s, in the 90s, and you're going, man, where is that guy? Right? And there's a lot of people that were sharing those videos on social media saying, everybody watch this and you would want Trump to be president. And I remember commenting on a few and like, yeah, you're right. If that guy was running, I would listen. That's not the guy running right now. That's like a shell of the guy that's running. But all I can hope for our country, man, is maybe who knows, maybe that's the guy that governs. I don't have a lot of faith in that, but
yeah. But once he sees his coalition falling apart, he's like, if Matt, and God, I hope he's right. If he doesn't, he can't build a wall, right? He can't have a deportation force and kick out every single Mexican. The economy would collapse. But what is the reaction of the Trump people? What do they do?
I think they continue to blame liberals. They say, oh, they're blocking it, or they're not letting us do what we really need to do. I mean, I think that there's definitely a chance that his not being able to accomplish things actually solidifies his base.
Well, I don't think that his hardcore base really cares. I think that he's not Hillary. They hate her. He is the antithesis of Obama. They hate him. So even if some of these things he doesn't get done, it's okay. He's still better than anything that they've seen. Let's just hope that he doesn't fuel that as he's governing. I'm having a hard time picturing him. Imagine this: we're gonna have a mass shooting. Our president steps up to the microphone to comfort us, to soothe us.
Right.
Obama is just brilliant at it. Even as aloof as he can be, when it comes time, he can heal. George Bush, the day that he stood, to give him credit, when he stood in the rubble of 9/11 with a megaphone, it's a powerful moment in presidential history. I was very proud of my president that day. I'm trying to picture when are we proud of Trump? When does he come out to heal a nation? And I just don't see it. I don't see him with the ability, the empathy to be able to do it.
Yeah, because he doesn't have any empathy. You could say it was rhetoric left over from the campaign. Everybody on the inside that talks about him, nothing's changed. This is still the reality show asshole that got elected. Nothing has changed at all. And the fact that nothing can hold his attention for more than 15 minutes. The fact that he tweets in the middle of the night and he wants to take revenge on everyone. The fact that he had his phone pulled from him so he won't tweet and blow the election because his impulse control is so bad. I just don't. I want to pretend as if, oh, well, that's just politics. But come on. This is scary. This is a problem. Somebody like him should not be president.
No, he shouldn't be. And to Matt's credit, Matt agrees with that, to be fair. He's like, look, he's unfit for this. There's no doubt. That doesn't change. He said that. He's obviously more optimistic. Now, a guy like Matt, who's a Republican, look, I listen, if I was a Republican, even if I didn't like Trump, even like Matt, if I didn't vote for him, I would still be on cloud nine right now. It's like, look, this is not the guy I wanted, but he will at least, Supreme Court justices, he will at least get things done. And right now, they control 3 branches of government.
If I were
and
a Republican right now, I don't know that I'd be super excited because Trump is so unpredictable. Yes, he's going to get to a point, probably at least one
from a legislative standpoint.
You don't really know what this guy is going to do. I don't think anybody really knows what this guy thinks or believes or what his ideology actually is. I think that this whole idea of he was going to surround himself by the best people or whatever he knows how to hire, to me, that's all just delusion. The fact that there's even any consideration for Sarah Palin and Rudy Giuliani to be members of a cabinet.
He's literally not a Republican. He's not a conservative. He adopted all that rhetoric. But that'll be really interesting. And
he was literally making up his stance on abortion as he went along. Yeah. So why you are going to think that he's going to nominate somebody who's emphatically pro-life to the Supreme Court? He says he is, but he says a lot of things, and as soon as he's pushed or pressured on it, he says the opposite thing.
Yeah, I think when it comes to stuff like that, he's going to keep campaign promises, though. He's going to embrace what he definitely is he's a chess player, right? He's got a lot of moving pieces.
No, he's not.
Let me finish. Don't underestimate him, guys. We've done that too many times. He wiped out 17 people in the primary, and he's the 45th president of the United States. Oh. He has been moving pieces around, and he has been.
No, he hasn't. He's not.
Yes, he has.
We did not underestimate him. We underestimated the ignorance of the electorate.
Okay, that's fine that you can say that, and I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, we also hold on. He that's fine.
He just went with one thing.
He also
just swinging an axe.
You don't swing an axe and get where he just did.
Yes, you do.
You don't flip blue counties in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan by swinging axes, guys.
Yeah, but the problem isn't that he was so calculated and he was so good. It's that genuinely the circumstances were so bad, and our candidate played into those circumstances in the worst possible way. It wasn't that Trump was so good. You could be the second worst team in the NFL. You're still going to beat the Cleveland Browns.
I think that the underestimation of him is dangerous. Okay, I think it's dangerous when we go into face him in 4 years as we're trying to unseat him. I think it's dangerous to think about his presidency and the things he's going to do and how to counter him.
Why
we have to know who he is.
He's the president. He's the president-elect of the United States. Nobody is underestimating him at all anymore. All we're countering with is saying that somehow you have to. Everyone does this. You have to somehow concoct in your mind that, man, he had a good strategy. He knew kind of like where to go here, where to go there. Oh, he did. Bullshit. He listened to right-wing radio.
He absolutely did. You know what? Because you know why? Let me give you an example of something.
He doesn't know policy.
When you look at the 47% remark with Mitt Romney, when that tape was released by David Corn, our friend at Mother Jones, and I've been on the phone with David Corn twice, so he's my friend.
He's
and anyway, But Mitt Romney ran to the cameras that night. He backpedaled it. He looked defeated. He was embarrassed. And you know what Trump did? He said, fuck it, I'm going to own it. I'm going to own it.
No,
and
he didn't.
Did.
He said, I didn't say that, or that's not what I meant, or the liberal media is twisting my words, or the liberal media is making stuff up. He did not have any strategy, Rick. The fact that he could get away with doing everything he did and it literally never hurt him, the fact that he could literally stand up and say, I could shoot somebody in the middle of that. But
his strategy
that is not
was
playing chess.
That's
dropping a bomb.
I'm going to be – listen, I think he's a son of a bitch, okay? What I'm trying to do is call a spade a spade. He said, I'm going to be unapologetically me, no matter what.
No, he didn't say I'm going to be unapologetically me. He said I'm going to unapologetically play into the id of the angriest portion of the population.
He was having with himself. Listen, what I'm saying to you guys is that I think he's far more strategic than you guys are giving him credit for. He didn't just swing an axe and do this.
Name one thing that he did strategically. That's ridiculous. What did he do strategically?
What he did strategically is that he played everyone. Every single person that doubted him. I don't care if it was us, if it was the media, if it was his own campaign. You name it. You can go down the list. He knew that I have a winning strategy. I have no money in ads.
What was that strategy?
Let me finish. He was outspent like 4-1. He had no real ground game. He didn't care. He said, there are people out there with their anxiety. They're upset. I know this. I'm tapping into it. And everybody that's trying to tell me what to do, no, I'm sticking to who I am and what I'm going to do because it's working. And my point of saying this is that that's what scares me about him supposedly pivoting to somebody else, because why would he at this point? You guys talk about, well, he might get in there and really he might tap into his liberal sensibilities when he was actually pro-choice and et cetera. I'm like, I don't think so. I think that he's been playing this role, call it a Colbert, whatever you want to do, but he has dedicated himself to it, and I do not think he's going to make any of those adjustments.
I don't completely disagree with you. He's definitely playing a role. He recognized a role that could be a winning candidate because of the people that he knew he could reach with that role. But to build that up into some sort of complicated Machiavellian, I'm moving pieces on all different sides of the board strategy to win a game, I think is overselling it. I definitely don't want to underestimate him. I mean, up to this point, the guy has done what he said he was going to do. But I think that the problem that we had and what allowed him to do that wasn't necessarily that we were underestimating them. It's that we were in our own little bubbles and we were underestimating the situation. We didn't really recognize we didn't do what we needed to do. It's not that he was such a great chess player. It's that we forgot that we were playing chess.
Well, and you know what? That maybe that's the case. To not get into semantics and everything, I mean, it was just a figure of speech. But maybe that's just it. Maybe he was just so incredibly underestimated that we didn't give him any credit when, in fact, he was maneuvering this and he was playing.
No, I think the difference is we gave too much credit to the American people. We gave too much credit to people being informed and would reject that sort of thing categorically. I don't think it's giving him too much credit. He literally listened to right-wing radio, had people do it, take notes, and developed basic positions and how to act towards the government, toward the Obama administration, towards Hillary, and it worked like a charm because, boy, did it bring everybody around and energize them.
Yeah, I don't disagree that he's an excellent manipulator of people in the same way that a con man is or a televangelist is. But things are going to get much more complicated for him from here moving forward because he can't step into the Rose Garden and give the same kind of speech that he was giving at rallies on the campaign trail.
Can you guys picture him? And I just painted the picture a moment ago of trying to heal the nation after a mass shooting. What about the State of the Union? I mean, is he going to come out? Because, every president always says that it's great. I mean, I would at least chuckle if he came out and said the State of the Union sucks. If we're stuck with this asshole, at least entertain me.
I think it might be okay because
that could actually be refreshing.
It's when he speaks. You want to see something that's funny. I think he could be because he's kind of a speechwriter. He'll read it off the teleprompter. They'll make him do it that way. You want to see something that's really funny? Is go back and just Google any of his debates. Don't watch the debate. Simply read what she says and the words that came out of his mouth. You'll think to yourself, what the hell was that? I read through the entire second debate. It'll make you want to faint. He said nothing because he knows nothing.
Gibberish.
No, he doesn't. You're right. He didn't say anything in the debates. It was just You're going to, when he had his best moments.
He's like, I'll wing it.
When you're going to jail, when he's a bully. That's all he is. He's a big schoolyard bully. And the funny thing is that he got his ass kicked by a woman 3 times on the playground, and yet he was still elected class president. And he was elected class president because he did make a lot of silly promises. Now all these people think that they're going to get, an extra hour of lunch and a free car and everything else. I don't know.
He was elected class president because the principal showed up a couple days before the election and said that Hillary was going to be suspended.
Now, here's the part that upsets me the most. We talked a little bit about this off mic. Is the person or the people that are actually celebrating today. And let's not even get into the KKK or David Duke, although that's all relevant and true. But let's just talk about the average person that we may personally know. And God, we're all from the South, so we know a lot of them. Yay. But anyway, but the how celebratory like hate is, and Mexicans are going to get deported, and Muslims are going to see their day of reckoning. And golly, it just bothers me, guys. It bothers me of the type of person that is celebrating and what they're celebrating for.
And that they feel it's okay to be that way now. They're not hiding as much as they were.
Yeah, they're vindicated. They've been rewarded. They have their candidate. And I understand that not every candidate is responsible for every person or group that votes for them. I get that. But one thing I know for sure, and my heart's of heart, I've never voted for someone who millions of racists celebrate their victory. Ever.
KKK, ever. Infowars.com.
Ever.
That dude on the street in California.
Drudge
You
readers.
remember him? Dude on the street pounding his chest? I was saying that like before we were on mic, that was like, go make my burrito, bitch, yelling at the Mexicans. That guy's won. All of the bigots in this country just got power in every body of government. What is going on?
Every body of government, they absolutely did. And that's the part that's so disheartening, is what has now been rewarded. And I said this before he was elected, is that if elected, racism gets rewarded, sexism gets rewarded. It gets rewarded.
Comey letter elected him. 200,000 votes in the blue wall. That is it. Comey letter elected him. If you really break that down, we're getting so worked up over the whole thing, saying that she destroyed. I agree. It should have been just like a blowout. But all you need it is a tiny smidgen of that knob that got turned when she was going to use the last 10 days of the election to turn positive, and that Comey letter completely derailed everything, turned her back into this cartoon villain, and here we are.
Right. Well, she had a lot of missteps along the way that she could have avoided and could have done differently, and would have helped to mitigate some of the WikiLeaks stuff and the Comey letter stuff. She rarely challenged him enough on policy. She treated him like a buffoon, which just played into the anger against political correctness. She mishandled the email response totally from the beginning. She mishandled the pneumonia. She mishandled her deplorables response. She chose the wrong vice president. She didn't give a real reason to vote for her. She underestimated Trump at every turn for sure. She thought women and Hispanics were going to totally carry it for her. And she sat back and barely campaigned for nearly 2 months, just thinking that this guy was going to implode, and it didn't. Well, meanwhile, along the way, she's just continuously alienated Bernie supporters. And at every turn, she seemed to validate the narrative of her as secretive and ethically challenged. She made huge mistakes in this campaign.
She made huge mistakes in this campaign, just like all candidates always do. No one made more mistakes than Donald J. Trump, and he was elected president. Okay? I would say this. If there was a candidate, let's Monday morning quarterback, I would give anything for Joe Biden to have ran. I think he's the person that could have overcome all this stuff in terms of the white rule anxiety and become the next president of the United States. That's probably where we would be right now. I'm not confident that person would have been Bernie Sanders. I love Bernie. I do. I just don't think a socialist Jew, and I say that coming from their perspective, that the white working class, blue collar guy, Pennsylvania, I don't think that he He was not tapping into that person. What he was tapping into were millennials.
Oh my God!
For sure.
Okay, so this segues perfectly into the point.
Lloyd, you look at the exit polls during the primaries. That's where he was winning. Was millennials?
Okay,
absolutely, he had that, and he wasn't winning with minorities. So my thoughts were always,
that's how Obama got started. What are you talking about?
What do you mean? What am I talking about?
Obama
What I'm telling you is that
with the millennials, and then it finally caught on. Bernie specifically talks to the white working.
Well, what's the difference in Hillary having momentum with minorities and it not catching on? Why is a college student more pertinent to the blue collar worker than a young African American woman is?
Your point is that the reason why he would have never caught on is because he was only appealing to millennials during the primary. That is not how it goes in the general election. That's where you get your momentum, and then you work your way up into the general.
Well, why didn't she get it then?
Why didn't she get what?
Well, why didn't she get that momentum then?
From millennials?
No, from the white working class. Why do you assume that he would have but she didn't?
Well, thank you, because that actually brings up the point that we were also discussing off air about 5 weeks ago, where what we were saying was the one flaw in her entire conversation to the American people is, we said, I don't feel that she's adequately talking to white people. I mean, and you're listening to liberal, and I think Jeremy was pretty much on the same side with me, is that I never really heard her come out on a big stage and say, look, this is happening to you, this is why you lost your jobs, and this is what we're going to do to try to fix it. It seemed like she only wanted the conversation to be around minorities. I understand that. That's our base, and that's what I want. But she left that massive segment of people.
She never really addressed the anxieties about trade and what we could do to lift people up in those areas where those jobs have been lost, because those jobs aren't coming back. I mean, people are holding on to a nostalgia about the way their life was and what their communities were like in the 80s when we had this large manufacturing class, and before the world changed into a more technological and global society, which is an inevitable thing. It's not anything any president can stop. We'd be way, way left behind. But what we're doing is, on two sides. One, the Democrats have ignored addressing those people and letting them know how their lives can be improved as we move forward. And on the other side, the Republicans are offering them this false promise of bringing back the way of life that they've lost. And we progressives, like, I'm not a member of the Democratic Party, but I would have really appreciated seeing the Democratic Party go out and say, look, we need to educate you in different ways. We need to address the situations that's happening. We need to learn for everybody to assimilate so that America as a whole can move forward into this new world, as opposed to you people feeling like you're being left behind. Didn't happen.
So,
all right.
I know we got to wrap it up, but I would say should that be the lesson? She should have won without the Comey letter, but that's another thing, talking about a mistake that she made, is fine, no Comey letter, okay, but also had she just kind of talked better to white working class people and just directly say to the white working class, let's not ignore them. They've been left behind too. Just let that come out of her mouth. Where would this election be? Just get a couple of them. Get 0.5% more of them, and she would have blown it out.
Yep.
Well, where hindsight is 20/20. All I know is that this was a low turnout election. She won the popular vote. Electoral College needs to be dismantled, in my view. I've been saying it for years. It made sense 50 years ago. It does not make sense in 2016, but it is what it is. It's not going anywhere. This is a low turnout election. Neither one of them, I mean, he's going to go into office with 47% approval rating. He doesn't have a lot of time. He doesn't have a mandate. He doesn't have a lot of time. What he does have is power. He has a lot of power because they control all three branches of government, but he has no real mandate from the people. He lost the popular vote. It was a low turnout election. It's demoralizing. This whole thing is a nightmare. And now we're stuck with this guy as our president, and all we can do is hope that he does not govern the way that he campaigned. And that's it. That's all we can hope for, because we're stuck with him. So, anyway, with that said, it is time for us to come together as a country, come together as liberals, do our own soul searching, and just hope for the best. So, with that said, let's end this on a fun note here. Our famous predictions, and man, what a whopper of one today! And just so our listeners know, we did not prepare this. We don't know what we didn't even discuss we were going to do predictions. So, hope you guys are ready. I'm going to start with you, Jeremy. Predictions.
Right.
Hit me.
I think we've reached a point where it's really hard to make any kind of predictions. I wouldn't be surprised by anything. I think my biggest prediction is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is waking up and taking a whole lot of vitamins for the next 3 years.
Please.
She's the oldest of the Supreme Court justices, right? She's 83. Anthony Kennedy is 80. There are a couple more in their late 80s. But, I mean, I think it's possible we go the next 3 years with a 4-4 split on the court.
All right, predictions, Michael Malloy.
Okay. How would I phrase this? Okay, so Trump's approval rating is not. He will not go into the inauguration on January 20th anywhere north of a 42% approval rating. I predict that his approval rating will plummet after the launch of the Trump University fraud case and also the sexual assault charges in mid-December that will carry the media coverage of the president-elect.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot more attention on that stuff now that he doesn't have Hillary's scandals to use as a shield.
We can't wait to see how that turns out.
He does it. My prediction is that if Elizabeth Warren challenges Donald Trump, he will be a one-term president. If she doesn't, we're stuck with him for 8 years. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Left Shew Politics podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Left Shew Politic, Facebook at facebook.com/Left Shew Politics. Search for our channel on YouTube, and you can find us on the LSP website, leftshewpolitics.com.